Take just a moment for everyone to come in from the waiting room. As a reminder, please mute yourself unless your item has been called and you are testifying. Good afternoon. This is a hearing before the Licensing Board for the City of Boston. Today is Tuesday, January 26, 2021. Today's hearing is being held pursuant to certain temporary amendments to the open meeting law. That is what allows us to meet virtually. Today's hearing will be recorded and will be posted on the City of Boston's website. Before I review procedural matters, I will introduce Chairwoman Kathleen Joyce.
Excuse me. Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Joyce. I'm Chair of the Licensing Board. Today I'm joined by Commissioner Liam Curran and Commissioner Kiana Saxon.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I will call each item in the order it appears on the agenda. Please ensure both your audio and video are working, as you need to have your video on in order to be sworn in. I will read each agenda item into the record. I will then ask who is present on behalf of the licensee. Please state your name, address, and your association with the record. For the record, I will then ask who is present from the Boston Police Department. I will then ask if there are any individuals with personal knowledge of the alleged incident who also wish to testify, and I will then swear all participants in. After that, the Boston Police Department will read the police report into the record. The licensee will have the opportunity to make a brief statement, and the chairwoman and commissioners will ask questions. Again, please ensure that your audio and video are functioning. Calling 222 Friends Inc., doing business as 222, located at 222 Friends Street. The date of the incident was December 4th, 2020. 16 patrons sitting together against COVID-19 guidelines in violation of Governor Charles Baker's executive order. Who is present for the applicant? I'm sorry, for the licensee?
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Attorney Michael Brangwin. I'm here on behalf of the licensee 222 Friends Inc. Let me know if you have any issues hearing me. I'm also here with the manager of record at the time. I'm sorry, the manager on the evening in question, Tim Bartholomew. Tim's with me here and is available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Who from the Boston Police Department will be testifying?
Sergeant Detective Gallagher.
Thank you, Sergeant. Are there any other individuals with personal knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify?
Detective Hernandez, if needed.
Thank you, Detective. Will all parties please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You.
Yes.
Thank you. Sergeant Detective, you may proceed with the police report.
Yes, good afternoon, Sergeant Detective William Gallagher, Boston Police. Currently assigned to licensed premise unit. This afternoon, I'll be reading the incident report that I wrote. On 12/4/2020 at 9:30 p.m., Sergeant Detective William Gallagher and Detective Eddie Hernandez, assigned to the licensed premise unit, conducted a licensed premise inspection of 222, located at 222 Friends Street. Inside the premise, detectives made observations of 16 patrons sitting together in the room to the left of the bar. These patrons occupied 2 tables and a large sofa that accommodated 10 patrons. Detectives pointed out their findings to the manager, Tim Bartholomew, who reinforced the necessity of adherence to the Governor and Boston Licensing Board guidelines on COVID-19. As a result, detectives had observed Sergeant Detective Gallagher issued license premise inspection notice number 005-151 to 222 for 16 patrons sitting together against COVID-19 guidelines of 6 per table. Boston 6 max. Mr. Tim Bartholomew signed for and accepted the notice. Corrective action was taken by the premise prior to the completion of the detective's inspection. Those essentially are the facts.
Thank you, Sergeant.
You're
Attorney
welcome.
Brangwine, would you like to make a statement on behalf of the licensee?
Yes, thank you. So the situation on the evening in question, there was a group, a large group that did come in to the restaurant that night, but they were divided into tables of 6 per the COVID regulations and seated at separate tables with all the appropriate COVID-19 protocols in place. There are stanchions dividing the tables, all in accordance with the CDC guidelines, the state COVID regulations, and I'm told that, and Tim can corroborate this if you would like him to, but at the end of the evening, this was at 9:30, the restaurant was closing, people were paying their bills. And the bill for this one group was a single bill. And the patrons, although they had been seated at separate tables and had not been permitted to interact or group gather together other than at their separate tables on the evening in question, they gathered together during this period of time simply to figure out who owed what on the bill. And in hindsight, and certainly going forward, all bills for any groups will be divided into the 6 or less that's required by the COVID regulations to avoid this type of issue going forward. But the applicant does have, and my office actually prepared for them, and all employees were informed and knowledgeable of a very, very detailed COVID-19 policy, which is above and beyond, in fact, the state requirements. And they take the health of their patrons very seriously, and sanitary hygiene issues very seriously. I'm happy to submit, I would have brought them if this hearing was in person with me, but I'm happy to submit to the board for its consideration the COVID policy that has been in place and was amended per any changes to the regulations that all employees have been briefed on and are aware of. And this was a single incident that was a bit of bad timing. I'm also told that from the time that they were operating during the COVID emergence, the COVID regulations, from approximately July till approximately December, there was, they welcomed and regularly, there was ABCC investigators on the weekends, ensuring that they were in compliance with all the regulations. And this was the only incident where, because of a matter of bad timing, they were cited for a violation. So they really have done their best in a very difficult economic climate to comply with all of the regulations. They're not actively, the applicant is not actively operating right now. They're working on transfer of location and will likely be before the board on that issue in the future. But they strive to do their best. And like I said, this was a situation that was, in hindsight, issue related to the check not being split. And certainly going forward, that will be done. And employees will be reminded that at no time can guests gather while they're, even if it's a large group, they have to be divided the entire time. But like I said, we're happy to answer any questions. And Tim is here with me, and he was there on the night in question, and he's happy to answer any questions. So we would ask that that the board issue a no violation under the circumstances.
Sergeant Detective, when you were there that night, did they appear to be paying their bill?
I couldn't tell. That back room, there's a large sofa that takes up most of that back wall. And though they had the two tables separated, there were people sitting on that couch, and we made recommendations that maybe they should block that section off. We didn't really go over and, put our nose into whether they were paying the bill or not. They corrected the action immediately, and we didn't see anything further to do.
Okay. Mr. Ranglin, so is your testimony that to pay the bill, they pulled the tables together?
No, and I should clarify, I'm not here to testify myself, just summarize kind of what my client has told me, but Tim can answer that question. He's been sworn in.
It's a long booth along the wall, so the tables were divided along that. So they all kind of congregated when the check came to see who owed what and what the status was and timing was.
If you could submit your safety and operations plan, I'm just going to repeat this. I repeated this to every person who's been before us for a COVID violation. You may need to get some more staff on these evenings. You have a responsibility to follow these guidelines that come down from the governor and from the mayor's office. It's my job to regulate them and to enforce them. And by not properly abiding by them, you're putting the livelihood of your employees at risk because you are risking being suspended.
Okay.
I don't have any questions. Commissioner Curran, Commissioner Saxon, do you?
I do
Nothing to
not.
add, thank you.
Thank you. The board will take this matter under advisement.
Thank you, members of the board.
Calling MYN Corp., doing business as Dublin Pub, located at 9 to 7 Stoughton Street. The date of the incident was December 1st, 2020. Premise operating after 10 p.m. required COVID-19 closing in violation of Governor Baker's executive order. Tables of more than 6 patrons in violation of Governor Baker's executive order. Who's present on behalf of the licensee? Is there anyone present on behalf of the Dublin Pub? We will take a second call.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I was on mute there, I apologize.
Okay.
Michael Brodigan on behalf of the licensee. With me today is Yaza Mohammed, the owner and manager of the establishment.
Attorney Brodigan, there's an echo, and could you please turn on your video?
Sorry about that.
Is there a second? You're still echoing. Is there do you have another phone?
Do you have a second phone logged into this hearing?
Attorney Brodigan, can you hear us? Attorney Brodigan?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. You're no longer echoing. Can you hear us?
I don't think you can hear us.
I can't hear you.
We can hear you. Do you have your volume on?
He's going to have to turn off the sound on his computer then if he's calling in by the phone.
Oh, I cannot hear you.
Okay, if you're calling in by the
I
phone,
got your message, but I can't hear you.
are you attempting to
I
dial?
can try to dial in on the phone if that would work.
Yep.
Thank you.
1 minute to try and dial in.
Leslie, can you message him to turn the volume off on his computer?
Yep, I just muted him as well. Why don't we move on to the next agenda item while the Attorney Brodigan and his client access. Calling JABC Corp., doing business as the Playwright Bar, located at 658 to 660 East Broadway. The date of the incident is December 19th, 2020. Persons under 21 in possession of alcohol on premise in violation of Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 34A, 34C, 64, and 64A. Who is present on behalf of the licensee?
My name is Christopher Tarowski, the general manager at the Playwright, 658 East Broadway, South Boston.
Thank you. Who on behalf of the Boston Police Department will be testifying?
I will be.
Are there any other individuals with personal knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify?
Sergeant Detective Gallagher, if need be.
Thank you. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Detective, you may proceed with the police report.
Good afternoon. I'll be reading from a police report, which I wrote on Saturday, December 19, 2020. Sergeant Detective William Gallagher and Detective Eddie Hernandez signed to the licensed premise unit under the direction of Lieutenant Detective Adrian Troy, and along with ISD Health Inspector David Flanagan, conducted a licensed premise inspection of the Playwright located at 658 East Broadway Street in South Boston. This inspection was also to ongoing multiple complaints that the premise was not following COVID-19 guidelines. While inside the establishment, detectives observed 6 patrons drinking beers and mixed drinks. Detectives noticed that these patrons appeared young. Detectives asked them to produce identification to confirm their ages. The patrons immediately stated they were under 21 years of age. The patrons then produced fraudulent driver's licenses that contained the individual's correct name but displayed a date of birth, which made it appear as though they were over 21 years of age. The fraudulent driver's license were confiscated by detectives. Should be noted, detectives discovered that the server did not ask the patrons for identification. All 6 patrons will be summoned into court for persons under 21, possession of alcohol, and possession of fraudulent identification. Detectives brought this to the attention of the person in charge, Mr. Chris Tarkowski. Sorry about that if I butchered it. As a result of what detectives observed, Sergeant Detective Gallagher issued license premise inspection notice 005474. Persons under 21, possession of alcohol on premise, beer and mixed drinks. Mr. Tarkowski signed for and accepted the notice. So,
Thank you. Would the licensee like to make a statement?
Yes, so everything he said was accurate in that day. I just want to kind of talk on the steps that we have taken since then to ensure that this does not happen again. When I spoke to both officers at night, they recommended an ID scanner. They personally recommended the one that they use, that was called Age ID, that it is downloaded, and we do have access to that, and we will be using that and monitoring more closely. We have had more discussions with the bar team, server team, and ensuring that all IDs are checked, and if there's any questions before anything is served, they do get a manager involved, and we will double check with that scan app. We have security more scheduled more, so they will be checking at the door as well as going around tables and double checking anybody's IDs that are in question to ensure that the servers are doing their due diligence.
Thank you. Chairwoman Joyce?
Yes. Is your testimony today that you now scan every ID?
We have not scanned every ID, but we have scanned any IDs that are in question, anybody that looks younger, and anybody that comes in with an out-of-state ID, especially that we are questioning.
Okay, so you check every ID.
We check
that
every
right?
ID, yes, that is
And
correct.
if it's not a state ID, you scan it?
We will scan it, especially if they are younger. Anybody that does look younger, we will scan them to ensure that the ID is in fact a real ID. When I spoke to the detectives, they said that this ID scans the information on the back of the ID to ensure that it is accurate as to how the state would have it, rather than scanning the ID that's on it.
Do you scan the IDs when the person's at the table ordering, or just when they get at the door?
Depending on the time of the night with the new restrictions, everybody has been in. So we do have people sit down and dine. So as soon as they order the drink, we will scan the ID if it's necessary there before they get the drink. Where people are coming in to dine rather than just drink like we've seen in the past, they are allowed to. They just won't be served if they don't have proper identification.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Curran or Commissioner Saxon, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Just more in the way of a comment, just to notify you, we've been seeing a fair amount of fake Massachusetts IDs, so don't sleep on those either, not just the out-of-state ones.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The board will take this matter under advisement.
Thank you.
Returning to item 2, MYN Corp. doing business as the Dublin Pub. Attorney Brodigan, are you dialed in? Attorney Brodigan? You are.
No. I think the phone is on mute. The 617-423.
I'm requesting you to unmute your phone.
*6.
Is that working now?
Yes, we can, if you could just.
No, it's not. Yeah. There you go.
That working?
Yes.
Okay, sorry for that. Apologize. Michael Brodigan on behalf of the licensee.
And who on behalf of the licensee is present with you, Attorney Brodigan?
With me is Yaza Mohammed, the owner and the manager of record.
Thank you. And who on behalf of the Boston Police Department will be testifying?
I will be.
Detective Hernandez and any other individuals with personal knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify.
Sergeant Detective Gallagher if need be.
Thank you. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Detective Hernandez, you may proceed with the police report.
Good afternoon. I'll be reading from police report, which I wrote on Tuesday, December 1st, 2020 at about 10:15 p.m. Sergeant Detective William Gallagher, Detective Eddie Hernandez, assigned to the licensed premise unit, responded to the Dublin house located at 7-9 Stoughton Street to speak to the staff regarding a complaint. The complaint stated that the establishment was not following COVID guidelines. Walking up to the front door, detectives noticed multiple persons sitting in the dining area. These persons were observed with what appeared to be food and drinks in front of them. As detectives walked inside, they noticed that these patrons, 10, were sitting together, drinking various alcoholic beverages. Detectives reiterated the importance of the governor's and Boston Licensing Board advisory on the prohibition of having patrons inside a licensed premise after the mandatory 10 p.m. closing. Detectives brought this to the attention of the person in charge, Mr. Yasir Mohammed. Mr. Mohammed stated that these patrons were waiting for takeout. As a result of what the detectives observed, Sergeant Detective Gallagher issued license premise inspection notice 005449 for 10 patrons on premise after mandatory 10 p.m. closing, an establishment allowing tables of more than 6 patrons. Mr. Mohammed signed for and accepted the notice. That's it.
Thank you, Detective.
Yeah.
Attorney Brodigan, would you like to make a statement on behalf of the licensee?
I also
Yes.
picture closed.
Thank you.
Yes, please. On the night in question, roughly around 9:20, 9:15, my client received a phone call from a group ordering takeout. The group came in. There's no question, and we're not disputing the fact that they were there after the mandatory 10 o'clock deadline, albeit it was only 15 minutes after. They were, in fact, waiting for takeout food. I believe that the food that the officers saw in front of the individuals were the actual takeout orders that they had placed, and they were in the process of leaving. While they were waiting for their food, they had 2 tables that were together. They did know each other. They were together. So they did congregate for a very short period of time. My client is very well aware of the COVID restrictions, takes it very, very seriously. These were the only patrons in the establishment at the time. It's been a very, very quiet time period for my client, as it has been for mostly every other establishment. It's been a difficult time, and my client is doing its best with regards to maintaining social distancing at the premises, takes it very serious, as I mentioned. And on this particular occasion, I think it was just a matter of timing, to be quite honest, that the police came in and they, as I said, they were in the establishment after the 10 o'clock, 15 minutes after the 10 o'clock curfew, but they were in fact getting their food and they were leaving. The group knew each other, so that as they were congregating waiting for their food, they probably did for a very short period of time end up gathering in an immediate group more than 6. When they first came in, they were in 2 separate tables, but I believe that they in fact did. My client recognizes that, understands the severity of this issue and the importance of maintaining the social distancing. And we've put procedures in place that now require anyone coming in for takeout has to sit down at the table separately and make sure that they're in compliance with all COVID-19 restrictions and guidelines.
Leslie, Detective, did this group look like they had takeout orders in front of them?
I can't, I don't remember. They definitely had food in front of them. I don't know if it was packaged. I don't believe so.
Okay. Attorney Brodigan, the picture I'm looking at, there's people with their coats off. I also have a question as to why a crowd was allowed in to pick up a takeout order. I also want to make sure your client is aware of all of the rules and regulations pertaining to the COVID guidelines. 25% capacity, is he aware of that?
He is.
Okay, this isn't going to be accepted in the future with takeout orders sitting around at 10:15. Your client needs to know he is placing the welfare of his employees at risk and his annual liquor license.
Okay. Understood.
Do you understand? Is this a 2-story establishment?
No.
There's only 1 floor?
1 floor, yes.
Okay. This board is not taking these COVID violations lightly. There are no excuses. He's going to have to put other measures into place if someone's calling in a takeout order. Quite frankly, I don't find it very believable. Commissioner Curran or Commissioner Saxon, do you have any other questions?
No, thanks.
Nothing to add.
Seeing no more questions, the board will take this matter under advisement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Calling Retail Beverages Partners South Bay, Inc., doing business as Liquor Aisle, located at 1100 Massachusetts Avenue. The date of the incident was December 19th, 2020. Patrons drinking alcohol in front of premise, single beers in violation of Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 64. Who's present on behalf of the licensee?
Thank you, Board. Matthew Porter, I'm the attorney for Retail Beverage Partners. Along with me today is Jayesh Patel, who is the manager of the LLC, and Sarika Patel, who is the manager of the liquor license.
Thank you. Who on behalf of the Boston Police Department will be testifying?
Sergeant Detective William Gallagher.
Thank you, Sergeant. Are there any other individuals with personal knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify?
I will be if needed.
Thank you, Detective. Please raise your right hands. Mr. Patel? Thank you. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Sergeant Detective, you may proceed with the police report.
Yes, good afternoon again. Sergeant Detective William Gallagher, Boston Police, currently assigned to the licensed premise unit. This afternoon, I'll be reading from a Boston Police incident report that I wrote. On 12/19/2020 at 4:15 p.m., Sergeant Detective William Gallagher and Detective Eddie Hernandez, assigned to the licensed premise unit, conducted a licensed premise inspection of Liquor Aisle at 1100 Mass Ave. The liquor store sits inside the Stop and Shop. Detectives had received numerous complaints of patrons drinking alcohol purchased inside the store directly in front of the premise. As detectives arrived on scene, they observed the whole area in front of the store, Stop and Shop, to be quite busy with patrons leaving the store with their purchases. Almost immediately, detectives observed two separate instances of persons drinking alcohol. Detectives approached each group, identified themselves as BPD, and spoke to the individuals drinking alcohol. The alcohol was disposed of and the individuals were sent on their way. Detectives determined that both males were homeless and had purchased single cans of beer from Liquor Aisle. Both males were drinking 40-ounce cans of Ice House. Once inside the liquor store, detectives spoke to the person in charge, who was working alone, and stressed the importance of monitoring the front of the store for public drinkers. Detectives emphasized the use of cameras in not serving frequent offenders. As a result, detectives had observed Sergeant Detective Gallagher issued a licensed premise inspection notice number 005472 to Liquor Aisle for patrons drinking alcohol in front of premise. Mr. Raj Patel signed for and accepted the notice. I want to go on to add that we did serve the notice of this hearing to the liquor store, and we did speak to the employee inside, and he informed me that they had stopped selling single cans of beer. Those essentially are facts.
Thank you. Attorney Porter, would you like to make a statement on behalf of the licensee?
Yes, please. So certainly there's no disputes as to any of the facts that occurred on that day. While our client is not aware of whether that alcohol was in fact sold to those individuals, they are aware of the issues outside the store. They've certainly been trying to do their best to combat any consumption of alcohol outside. There are large homelessness issues in that area. I think that they do understand that they need to be part of the solution on that. To that end, they've added additional employees at the store. They're checking outside the store on a regular basis to make sure there is no consumption of alcohol. And I think as the sergeant pointed out, they have voluntarily ceased the sale of any single serving alcohol, which they believe will certainly help combat this as well. So they're certainly aware of the issue, and that they're trying to take all the steps to be part of the solution.
Thank you. Chairwoman Joyce, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Commissioners Saxon or Curran, do you have any questions?
No questions, thanks.
Seeing none, the board will take this matter under advisement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Calling James Associates, Inc., doing business as the Broadway, located at 734 East Broadway. The date of the incident is December 19th, 2020. Persons under 21 in possession of alcohol inside the premise in violation of Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Sections 34A, 34C, 64, and 64A. Who is present on behalf of the licensee?
My name is Matthew Verzi. I'm the general manager of the Broadway, 726 East Broadway.
My name is Adam Dory. I'm the Director of Operations for the Broadway Hospitality Group, 732 East Broadway, South Boston.
Thank you. Who, on behalf of the Boston Police Department, will be testifying?
I will be.
Detective. Are there any other individuals with personal knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify today? Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Detective, you may proceed with the police report.
Okay. On Saturday, December 19th, 2020, Sergeant Detective William Gallagher and Detective Eddie Hernandez signed to the BPD licensed premise unit under the direction of Lieutenant Detective Adrian Troy, and along with ISD Health Inspector David Flanagan, conducted a licensed premise inspection of the Broadway located at 726 Broadway in South Boston. This inspection was also to an ongoing multiple complaints that the premise was not following COVID-19 guidelines. While inside the establishment, detectives observed 6 patrons drinking beers and mixed drinks. Detectives noticed that these patrons appeared young. Detectives asked them to produce their identification to confirm their ages. The patrons immediately stated they were under 21 years of age. Patrons then produced fraudulent driver's license that contained the individual's correct name but displayed date of birth that made it appear as though they were over 21 years of age. These fraudulent driver's licenses were confiscated by detectives. All 6 patrons will be summoned to court for possession, under 21 possession of alcohol and possession of fraudulent identification. Detectives brought this to the attention of the person in charge, Mr. Matt Berizzi. As a result of what detectives observed, Sergeant Detective Gallagher issued license premise inspection notice 005473 for persons under 21 possession of alcohol on premise, beer and mixed drinks. Mr. Berizzi signed for it and accepted the notice. That's all.
Thank you. Would the licensee like to make a statement?
Yes, so I don't dispute the findings from the detectives. I will say that we have been diligent in the past. We have not had violations of this kind. Typically, the process is that the servers are identifying guests before purchasing alcohol. We also have security stationed at the front door. Typically now earlier with the change at that time, the change of times, they're also have been trained. We have an ID checking guide up at the front that they were to utilize, and if there were any questions on IDs. On the recommendation of Sergeant Detective Gallagher, we did go and we did purchase a scanner application that we are currently utilizing in-house. We are scanning IDs that are in question or for any guests in the house that may appear to be younger, that we want to double check on the IDs. That includes Massachusetts IDs, as again, Sergeant Detective Gallagher had mentioned. There's been a uptick in a lot of fraudulent or fake Massachusetts IDs. So we've been using that app. We've also implemented additional training for the service team and for security. We've added on an additional security person we actually added that on a bit ago. So we've been adding additional security. And again, they've gone through training on IDing and identifying fake IDs as well.
Thank you. Chairwoman Joyce, do you have any questions?
I just want to let you know, we are aware that these are very difficult times for restaurants, but that doesn't mean you can let your guard down with these fake IDs.
Of course.
I'm really asking you to be even more vigilant. I know it's sometimes they seem to be in opposition of each other, those two goals. So I don't have any questions. Commissioner Curran or Commissioner Saxon?
No questions.
Anything else? Thank you.
The board, seeing no additional questions, the board will take this matter under advisement. That is the final agenda item before the board today. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.